right, we are good.
Hey, everybody, it's Dale Jr. for the Dale Jr. Download. This is the Ask Junior portion of the show. With me on this segment is Leah Vaughn. She'll be teeing up your questions. Mike Davis is here. Schultz is here. But we're looking forward to it. It's been a great segment over the last several weeks with a lot of great questions, so let's just get to it.
First question coming from Patrick Kinzer. Your thoughts on the fire suit pants debate between the NASCAR boot cut and the IndyCar high cut? There was a lot on social media about this.
It's a clear, line where boot cut for NASCAR, whatever you call that other thing for IndyCar. I understand that, there's not a lot of room down there in the pedal box of an IndyCar for all that material. I get it. I think if I was driving an IndyCar, I probably would wear a suit similar to what they use. But absolutely, if you're driving a stock car or you're racing at the local short track, boot cut is the way to go.
Our next question coming from Dave Sykes. I saw you repost the 60X car that was rebodied and had a 3 for your dad to use on the Budweiser Showdown of Champions tour. Do you remember those barnstorming tours, and did you ever go on them?
So the Budweiser Showdown of Champions, I think that's right. Is that what he's? Yep. So Ron Bouchard, I think Matthew Dielner, if he was here, he would be able to help us a lot on exactly where and when this took place. But basically, Ron Bouchard would gather a group of Cup drivers when they were racing up north, and go into some of these places to race all weekend. They'd run like 6 or 7 races in 5 nights or something like that, and it was only about 8 to 10 of the Cup drivers in race cars that belonged to the racers from that racetrack. So it'd be like Josh Berry allowing a Cup regular to run his late model stock car against a bunch of other Cup regulars at a show. And Dad took that really seriously. A lot of the other drivers, I don't know how seriously they took it, but Dad would go up there, work on the car and practice, try to help the guys get the car more comfortable or whatever he needed to do. He didn't just hop in it and race and collect his check and go home, because I'm sure they're all getting paid a couple grand to show up. But Dad took it real serious, to get aggressive, spin you out. He wanted to win. I think the year the car was not one of the years, he went up there twice. There was the pictures of the car you'll see on the internet where the car has no paint on it. It's just the Wrangler decals over a tin body. And then there's the die-cast version of the car, like we have here on the table, of the car actually painted with the decals. But one year he won 6 out of the 7 races, just dominated. I thought it was really cool. But unreal that car still exists. The chassis of that car still exists. And I think I saw in the picture of that post on social media, the roof from that actual car that Dad drove in '88 is sitting on that car, the roof. I'd love to have that for my own collection. But either way, hope they restore that car to what it used to be.
Next question coming from Ricky Ellison. Outside of the racing world, who was your first athlete that you liked?
Outside of the racing world, the first athletes I liked were going to be Washington football team players from the 80s. Darryl Green, Art Monk. I was a huge Art Monk fan. He was a receiver for Washington, and I think set the single season record for the most receptions. It's since been broken, but I think he beat Steve Largent for having the single season reception record one year. But if you needed a first down, whether if it was third down, short, long, didn't matter. If you needed a first down, Art could catch the ball and make it happen. And I don't know, he just seemed like just such a great person and player. I've got a couple autographed items from Art Monk. Dale Green was one of the fastest men in the NFL. That was kind of his thing, cornerback for Washington back then. I met a lot of the players over the years, and there's a good handful of them that they were a big deal to me. That was outside of racing. There wasn't much more in my life important besides how Washington was doing and the players on the team and what was going on there.
Our next question coming from Michael, we're just going to say Michael P, because I'm not even going to try to butcher this last name. Why didn't we see the high side used more often until Reddick at the very end of the race?
It's so interesting to me because I think a lot of that has to do with the temp. We're not racing in the middle of the summer. And I know that, the final race of the year there in November isn't in the summer either, but it tends to be pretty warm down there in the middle of November, humid, and maybe they just didn't get the temperature and the track temp to get some of that speed on the wall earlier in the race. Sometimes you think it's the aero package that dictates, whether the cars can run better on the bottom or the middle of the racetrack. You'd think with a lot of downforce that would definitely help the bottom of the racetrack. But honestly, the Xfinity cars seem to look the same as the Cup cars as far as where they were running on the racetrack throughout the event. The place is getting slick and worn out. Running the high line and running the wall is, to be fast up there 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you only needed to be a couple feet or a foot maybe from the wall, and you could find that blazing speed that you could produce only running that groove. Well, as the track's worn out and the grip's gone, and people have continued to run that area more and more and more and polish that part of the racetrack, now you need to be literally an inch off the wall to find that magical 3/10 that exists only right there, right? If you're 4 inches off the wall, you're no better than you are in the middle of the racetrack. If you're a foot off the wall, you're not no faster than you are if you're running the bottom. But if you can get right there on that right next to it, like only a couple guys are willing to do and only a couple guys can, like Reddick and Noah and a handful of others, that's where maybe that high line speed still exists, but eventually maybe it goes away entirely as this track continues to wear and wear and the surface gets older. But I think that you'd like to think that if you could create a lot of track temp, you'd definitely see cars running a lot higher. So you create that track temp by either running a different time of the year or during a different time of day. But it's weird to me because we really didn't see that speed from the top till the very end of the race, the coolest part of the day, from Reddick right at the end. I mean, it was lightning speed, but where was and why wasn't that there at the first half of the race? It's hard for me to answer that question. It's a riddle, I guess. It's kind of a mystery as to when that top groove is going to come in and why it comes in, and because it doesn't seem to make much sense.
All right, one more question today coming from Mark McCullum. Based on what you know about the next-gen cars, do you think there will be a big change in who runs up front versus what we see now? Are there talented drivers who don't run up front now because of the gap in the equipment, or do you think nothing will change?
Oh, I mean, the parity that we've seen in the season this far, this far into, I mean, we're only 3 races in, but man, I mean, the parity that if you're watching that Homestead race, and watching Buescher run up front and Newman having an awesome race, McDowell hanging in there with a great run that resulted in a great finish. A lot of the guys that you expect that I had in my fantasy lineup running in 15th, 16th, 17th, Logano, Chase, and those guys kind of struggling all day. Everybody's got to be shocked. Everybody's got to be kind of blown away, and everybody's already trying to understand like what's causing this. And so people are already starting to, pin some things on the board as to, there's a parts freeze. There's been a change on how they measure the wheel wells in tech that's sort of brought everybody closer together and made a lot more parity. It's incredible to watch. And if the new car is going to result in more parity, I'm all for it. You want the most competitive form of motorsport in the world, where, there's anybody in the top 25 or top 30 can win. That's what you want. And that's kind of what this feels like now. You know, and we're seeing some of the younger guys start to have that success. I remember when I started in broadcasting, we had this young guys versus the old guys thing, and it got kind of testy. If you remember, Harvick and a bunch of the guys were like, hey, you know, they're not good until they're starting, you know, when they're not winning any races, right? All the old guys are still the guys winning these races, and the young guys had yet to really stake their claim going to victory lane winning races to warrant that kind of attention. Well, now they are. You know, you got Chase Elliott winning the championship, William Byron winning this past weekend. Some of the younger guys are starting to win races, you know, and we may be seeing a bit of a shift in the sport in who's the guy, who do you expect to be successful. It might not be the same names that we've been accustomed to over the last several years, and I'm not putting anybody's career in the coffin, but I'm just saying there's tons of parity. I'm blown away just watching that race this past weekend. I was blown away by the performance of some of these teams, and I'm all for it. I hope it continues. We need a successful Roush Fenway organization. It's amazing to be able to see Front Row or a team like that that's been in the sport grinding for so many years finally start to see some real true success and great performance. It's very encouraging for owners, new owners. Trackhouse, those guys go out there and they run in the top 20, competitive all night for Daniel. So, you know, Daniel's making a move in his career and hoping that it's going to be a good, successful one, and it seems to be going in the right direction. So pretty cool to see some of the new stuff happening.
All right, that's it.
All right, y'all, great questions. Appreciate it, Leah. Thanks for everybody for supporting our podcast and supporting the Dale Jr. Download and Dirty Mo Media. Dr. Jerry Punch is our guest on the show today. He was incredible. Just some really, really amazing moments and conversation. The guy's seen everything as you can imagine in our sport, and he tells us all about it. So I hope you'll tune into the podcast. You can listen to the full version of the podcast on any podcast platform. That'll be out later tonight, I imagine. The TV show, Mike, when is that?
I'm hearing Thursday at 8 p.m.
All right, Thursday, 8 p.m. Thursday, 8 p.m. for the television show on NBCSN. We'll talk to you guys next week. Have a great week.